So my name is Kathy Stromer, and I'm the Programme Manager for Research Development at the Learned Society of Wales. I'll just be going over the requirements of applying for the grants, research workshop grants from our guidance. With me is Professor Helen Fulton. She is Vice President of the Learned Society for Wales. She's based at Bristol University. And over the past 2 years, Professor Fulton has helped us to review the applications for our workshop grant scheme. So she's going to offer some advice on creating a successful application. Dr. Amy Mizzen is from Swansea University, and she was awarded a grant in round 1 of the most recent call for applications in the scheme for her project, which will look at making active travel accessible for children in Wales. So she'll be sharing some of her experiences of applying the grant and how she's using the process to help her with thinking about further funding. And not forgetting Barbara Ibnagarga Soltero, the program assistant, and she is our main contact for the ECR network. She'll also be handling the technical side of this webinar. So yeah, okay, just the basics here I thought I'd start out with. These are grants for up to £1,000. What we've recognized is that sometimes it's hard to find these small spots of money, but they can help to cover the startup costs for a new collaboration. So you would do that for a workshop or other meetings. So by startup, we mean these type of meetings and workshops you would need to lay out the concrete plans for a future proposal for more funding. And I'll discuss that more in a minute too. Lastly, you'll note that there are the 3 pillars for the scheme. For the first 2, we are expecting your application to fit in those specific fields, Wales studies and humanities, arts and social sciences, or sometimes we abbreviate that to HAST. But for the early career researchers, applications can be in any subject area that you have. So any area is eligible, but you must be an early career researcher. There we go. Quick how to apply. You can find the link to the application form on our website. It is bilingual, and I would advise you to write out the contents of your application in advance in a Word document or similar, and then cutting and pasting them into the form. You wouldn't be able to add any attachments or graphs to this form. It's just a Microsoft Forms form. You will receive an automated email confirming your submission, and please keep that as proof that you have submitted. You'll not receive anything more detailed. And as far as I'm aware, you're not able to download a PDF of your submission via forms. But after the closing date, if you send us an email, we can send you a PDF. So there you can see the link, which if Barbara, you'll be able to put some of these links into the chat afterwards. And this is just what the website looks like for how to apply when you go online. And obviously we have our entire website is bilingual, so that's just the English version. So all projects will go through eligibility checking. And what we'll be looking for firstly is who is the lead of the PI on the project. And really the key point is that the lead applicant must be based in Wales. Now, your partners can be from Wales, they can be from other parts of the UK or anywhere else that's relevant to the project. The lead PI doesn't have to be on a permanent contract, but we would expect you to be employed at that institution for the period of the project. So as long as the project's funded, then we would expect you to be at that institution. It's important that the lead applicant is demonstrably a researcher. Because you can see they don't have to work for a research institution, but we would expect research to be a significant part of their role with their employer if they're not in the academic sector. Partners on the project team, you can have more than one, and you can include a variety of different organizations. And in fact, we're really looking for multidisciplinary teams, getting that nice collaboration. If you go online to our website, you can see that the Wales Studies grants from last year have some really interesting different groups involved in their researchers. Right. The next thing we'll be looking at for eligibility checking is the type of project you are proposing. We are expecting them to be new collaborations or including a new element. They're workshop grants, so we expect to see a meeting or a workshop somewhere in there. What's not eligible is using the grant to pay to go to a workshop or a conference. In the workshop, you'll be developing your network of contracts. You could also be creating a specific network of practitioners, for example. At the reviewing stage, which Helen will go over, they'll delve more deeply into how well you articulate what you're doing and the link between it and the Future Generations Act. So is it the right project? Is this a project that has the right strategy so it could lead to further funding? Or more practically, is the design in the design of the workshop, has EDI been considered? So if you're planning a workshop somewhere, is that somewhere accessible for the people who will be attending the workshop? And what about the way we work with your partners? So if you're working with the public sector or the charities, consider how you make sure that you're listening to their expertise in your planning and articulate that in your application form. Just to make a note of the start dates under this call, for this round, we're expecting the projects to start between the 1st of January and the 31st of March next year. So there will be a gap between the planning, you're submitting your application, and when your project actually starts. Now, the money, as it were. The costs in the projects should be justified. To be honest, staff costs are eligible, but I think that in most instances, you know, the amount of £1,000 grant compared to your salary is not going to be that great. So it may not be relevant. What we expect to see is costs relating to a meeting or holding a series of meetings. So, you know, we would expect there to be travel costs, consumables, materials for the meeting or workshop. If there's some equipment which is essential for the meeting and the cost is justified, you could also request that. We do expect the projects to provide value for money. So, you know, you should be thinking about what space you might be able to get for free. And, you know, using the least expensive travel methods were reasonable. And if you have to have an overnight stay, what's a more inexpensive hotel? And your university usually has some guidelines or advice on costs. So it's not full cost recovery. Obviously, it's £1,000, not for attending a scheduled conference, and it's not for ordinary office equipment. So, I mean, we wouldn't expect you to be using the money to pay for a laptop or other things which the university would normally be providing. Okay, so this is the last area which we really talk about eligibility than quality. Wales studies has to have a Welsh context. We had a Wales studies project the other year that looked at far-right tattoos in Welsh prisons. So, you know, this can be broader than what you might traditionally imagine. Obviously, it has to be in that subject area, but also looking at the relationships being created between the research communities. For the early career researchers, we say within 10 years post-PhD, but we do recognize that there may be circumstances where you've taken a break in those 10 years, and we will be flexible. The goal for the ECR projects in any field is that they're creating a community of ECR, so the other PI would also be an early career researcher. So this is just my little handy reminder of the areas where we expect to look at when you're designing your project. Collaborative, a workshop, interdisciplinary, leading to a new partnership, and sustainable. And I have thrown in the word sustainability in there in the sense that we would expect that the partnerships be something that can be maintained, that you'll be moving on and doing more things with this group, that you'll create a further project out of the work you've done, and that you'll want to continue working with these people, and the benefits from your interactions aren't just a one-off. And lastly, some important dates. The deadline for submission is the 4th of November, so there's still quite a bit of time to work this out. I think we've put 4 p.m. officially on some of the guidance, but there's some flexibility there. Our plan is to notify successful applicants by the 16th of December. So, this is right before Christmas. Please check your emails. If you're leaving for the holidays before then, if you will, send us an alternative email address. It is, 16th of December is probably the last date where we would be able to notify you. I'm actually hoping that we'll be able to do that before then. Funded projects will be expected to send an update, interim report on the 1st of April next year. And our aim is to have all the claims paid by the end of May. That's just for the budgeting purposes. And again, if you are successful, we would talk through that. So lastly, Barbara can put details in the chat for our email addresses. We have got this research and development at lsw.wales.uk email address that both of us can check. So if one of us is away, then the other one will check and get back to you. So you may hear a response from me, or it might be from Barbara. And if you have any questions that come up after the webinar, please send it to this address. And this is also the address we'll use when we send you any notifications about the project. So that is a quick run through of the basics of the project, the program, and hold on, stop sharing there. So now, if it's all right, I'll just hand over to Helen, who can talk you through what the reviewers are looking at. Thanks, Helen.
Diolch yn fawr, Cathy. Pnawn da pawb. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here with an interest in this scheme, which, as Cathy said, is a really important way of getting these small amounts of seed corn funding to do something that will help you move on into a bigger project and perhaps to get some larger amounts of external funding. So I think one of the main things we're looking for when we review the applications is the focus and the clarity of what it is you're planning to do with the £1,000, which is not a huge amount of money. So you need to be very focused about how you're going to spend it to get the best value for money. So we're really looking for projects that are very focused, very specific, and have some very clear potential outcomes. We don't expect you to know exactly what you're going to be doing or what will come out of it, but you have to have some plans of what you hope will come out of the workshops. You can apply for just a single workshop, or you can apply for 2 or perhaps 3 workshops or seminars, whatever is best suited to your project. But you have to say why it is you're doing it that way. Why is 1 enough? Why do you need 3? You have to explain, what's the justification for structuring the project in the way that you describe it. It's important to remember that when the application form talks about the project, it means this £1,000 project. It means the workshop or the seminars or whatever you're running. It doesn't mean whatever larger project you might have in mind, because often people use these workshops to bring a group together who are then going to apply for ESRC funding or AHRC funding, whatever it happens to be. And sometimes applicants can get confused between the mini project, the starter project, and the big project. And what we need as reviewers is to be very clear about what it is you're talking about, just because sometimes people talk about the bigger project and we say, but you can't do that with £1,000. So you have to be very clear that you're just talking about this sort of mini starter project of the workshop or the seminars or whatever it is you want to do, and then talk about ways in which that starter project might indeed lead to a larger grant application or a co-written policy document or whatever it is you hope will come out of it. So we're looking for that clarity and that focus about this specific project that is going to cost £1,000, what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, and how you think that will lead to some interesting outcomes. We're also looking for the quality of the collaborators in the group. So obviously we look at the track record of the lead applicant, but also the nature of the partners who are going to be involved. You don't have to name every single person, but you do need at least 1 or perhaps 2 other people who are named, and so we know where they come from. Are they other academics? Are they from some public sector or third sector organization? Where do they come from? What's their interest? What can they bring to the project? What can they bring to the workshop or the seminar that will be helpful for the intended outcomes? So the quality of the people, as well as the quality of the project, is something that we're looking for. You need to be very careful that you address the criteria and the guidelines on the guidelines sheet, which set out very clearly the fact that, for example, you need to work with external partners as well as academics. So it's got to be interdisciplinary, so people from several different disciplines. It's fine to have different disciplines within HASS if you're applying through the HASS stream. It's fine if people come from different disciplines within HASS. Don't feel that you have to drag in somebody from STEM unless you actually need that person from that background. But you do need, it's got to be not everybody from a history department or not everybody from the law faculty or whatever. There's got to be some diversity among the collaborators. We look for the sort of value of the project in terms of the well-being goals of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. That is one of the criteria for the grant, and we do look at that. And you need to explicitly say in your application, you feel your project addresses this element or this goal of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. It might just be one, you might be able to address 2 or 3 or more. It's fine, but you need to make it explicit to show that you know what the goals are, you've thought about them, and you've thought about ways in which your project fits one or more of those goals. So that's something else that we look for. We do take notice of whatever potential outcomes you think are going to come out of this. So large grant applications are obviously good. It could be writing a joint paper. Jointly written papers are very important for both policy and ref reasons. So there are good reasons for having jointly written outcomes. Whatever your outcomes are or you hope to be, it's useful for us to know where you're heading. What is your ultimate goal with this? The issue of sustainability, as Kathy said, is another important criterion. We want to know that this isn't just a get together for the fun of it, but that this is going to lead to some serious ongoing collaboration through a grant application or through other activities. Again, you don't have to be too specific about that, but we need to be reassured that there is some planned sustainability for this particular network or collaboration of people. So you need to make all this explicit when you describe what it is you're going to do. You also need to be aware of the specific points that need to be addressed for whichever stream you're applying to. So for Wales studies, you need to outline the relevance of the project for Wales. How is this project going to benefit Wales, or how is it based within Wales in a way that means the project is firmly rooted within the Welsh context? And early career researchers need to explicitly say, I got my PhD in less than 10 years ago, and say why you're an early career researcher. So that helps us tick that box that you are eligible for that stream. So do be aware of those different streams and the criteria that you have to check for those. Just make it explicit, just say it in your description of the project. Be very, very clear and explicit about how you're addressing the criteria, as with the equality, diversity and inclusion. So for example, you could say that your network includes people from different walks of life or from different backgrounds, from different age groups, from different ethnic groups, if that's appropriate. Say explicitly how your team, your network of collaborators addresses the idea of EDI. The other thing we look for is how you budget the £1,000. I mean, it isn't a lot of money. You need to be very clear about how you're going to spend the money. So a little breakdown of the budget is the best way to do it, to say that we need £300 for catering, we need £200 for a train ticket for for one of the parties coming from London or whatever. Try and be as specific as you can in breaking down the costs of the budget, and then justify each item. So, you know, £150 return train ticket from London, and then you say underneath, this is the cost of a standard ticket using advance purchase or whatever, to show that you've thought about what's the cheapest way of moving people from one place to another. So itemize the budget and justify each item in the budget. So that's quite an important thing to do, given that it is a small amount of money. You're not going to be held to this at all, I should say. If you then report on the 1st of April that unfortunately your guest speaker from London couldn't make it, and so you've used the money for something else, that's fine. But it's very helpful to know how you plan to use the money very specifically for different items, so that we can evaluate the value for money. That's really what we're looking for. Is this a good way to spend that amount of money? So I think I've covered everything I wanted to say. So if there are any questions towards the end, I'm very happy to answer them. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Helen. I think you've made some really interesting and useful points. I know that Amy has to leave at 1:15, so I'm going to go straight to her, and then we'll do questions and answers at the end. Okay, Amy.
Thanks, Kathy. Prynhawn da pawb. My name's Amy. I'm a research fellow at Swansea University in the medical school. And yeah, I've just been asked to share a little bit about my experience from the last call, where we were successful in getting the £1,000 funding for our workshop. So our workshop was titled, or is titled, we haven't conducted it yet, Making Active Travel Accessible for Children in Wales. And we're kind of coming from this perspective where, yes, we wanted to bring together or to create collaboration between academics in Wales, but also we wanted to go beyond academia, as Kathy and Helen have been encouraging us to have really good discussions with policy and planning, with the idea of, yes, we want to have discussions in the workshop, but that to begin to build relationships so that going forward, there's established collaborations that for future research as well. So kind of having a long-term goal in mind as well. And we are fortunate in Wales. I'm not sure what your backgrounds are, but sorry for some of you that might know this, but we're really fortunate in Wales to have a really rich policy landscape of for the built environment and health. So there's lots of policy promoting how healthy built environments should be built, but we still see kind of a little bit of a disjoin between actually that being actioned and being taken by planners and implemented, and also between academia and the evidence that we provide. And so we wanted to basically bring together all these perspectives and to begin to try and find a harmonized language that we can speak, because we all have the same goal, but how do we work together and really move forward beyond stating that this is a good thing to do. Yeah, that's kind of going to be our aim. We've planned to bring everyone together after Christmas. So we're bringing together people from Public Health Wales, Sustrans, Pedal Power, Sports Wales, and planners from local authorities as well. So really excited for that, really. And we're going to have different elements to the workshop to probably be specific and ask some specific questions to people about future funding, potential for us to apply for a grant, to go beyond this workshop, but then also kind of a more general conversation with the ambition just to build genuine relationships together, which we think will be really worthwhile for a more longer term goal. I think my encouragement would just be to not to overlook the small amount. Yes, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's a really streamlined process, and I would just say it was not easy is probably the wrong word, but streamlined is a good word, because it's not a cumbersome application. I just think it really reflects well the amount of money that you're asking for. You know, you're not writing pages and pages and pages. So I think it's a great scheme to apply for, and just don't overlook the seemingly small amount, because actually for me as an early career researcher, it's great just to be able to kind of for experience, but also contributing towards the portfolio of work that we want to do, rather than trying to shoehorn in too much. But actually, right, this discussion part is really important of the research. So let's maybe package it as a workshop, and this scheme has worked really well for that. And of course, it kind of will all contribute to, we will evidence this in future applications and say we were already funded to do this work, and have all these important discussions, and we can talk about the outcomes from that. And I think it's really good as well in the scheme that having that the reports, the mid-term report and the final report, and just being clever and strategic with how you phrase that. We've had discussions in our team of thinking about setting it up in preparation for an article, so that we're not duplicating our work, but that we're being streamlined and strategic in how we're thinking about these things. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I haven't forgotten anything, but I think that's all I wanted to say. So thank you. Diolch.
Diolch, Amy. Right, I don't know if anyone has any questions either for Amy, Helen, or myself. Just feel free to pop them in the chat if you feel that way, or as I say, if you can raise hands, then we'll take them as they go. So Amy, you mentioned that you found it fairly easy to apply for. How long, how does it compare, like the response and with other grants you have to, and what do you plan to do with the work you put into the application?
Yeah, so as in how long in a time? Oh
yeah.
God. I don't know if I could answer that directly, but I just maybe easy is the wrong word, but I just think it really reflects. I just think it's really well designed. I don't know off the top of my head, sorry, in hours, but it was also really helpful. We kind of used it as a practice to really be precise in what we wanted to do as well, because in a workshop you can get excited, can't you, and think we could do this and this, but it was so we kind of worked hard on that, and then we were able to use that for the application. So again, just being strategic in what you're doing, so you're not spending time repeating and rewriting things.
Yeah, Helen, did you want to add something?
I did. I was reminded by something Amy said, that these small grants are very, very helpful when you're applying for larger grants. To be able to say that somebody has already invested in you and your project is really worth a lot when you then go to external funders. And it's also worth noting that you can top up the £1,000 with additional funding, perhaps from your own institution. So you could go to your school research director or whoever and say, look, I've got a grant of £1,000 already from an external body, the Learning Society. Would you put in an extra £500 so that I can, have 3 workshops instead of 2, or invite another couple of speakers or whatever. So you can use the £1,000 as leverage, both for larger grants and also for topping up that particular project. So it is well worth having.
Thanks, Helen. We've got a question in the chat. Would that person be willing to unmute and come on camera and say it, or I can read it out if not? So that's Zubaria. Sorry, I'm probably pronouncing your name. Yeah, go ahead, Ed, if you could unmute.
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much for conducting such a nice session. So I just wanted to ask a question. Can I work with my supervisor and conduct a workshop in a university of Pakistan? We need to cover up only catering related cost, and also maybe the cost for printing the posters and handouts. I'm not sure it is possible or not, or I have to conduct the workshop in the UK. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So you're based in Wales then? Yes.
Yes, but actually I'm going to Pakistan, and I want to share the findings from one of my research papers. So we are planning to conduct a workshop for 30 participants.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like that would be eligible from what you've told me, because it sounds like you would like to do a presentation about some research that you've already completed in Pakistan, with the people in Pakistan, rather than creating a new collaboration with them there. There would be, if you were creating a new collaboration and you fit into either the Wales studies, the HAS or the ECR, then it would be possible to work with overseas partners. I mean, we wouldn't be paying for travel, and I'm not sure how you would run the workshops, but if you're creative, you may be able to find a way, but we wouldn't be able to pay for you just to present your findings and dissemination. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. So actually
Okay.
I can discuss with my supervisor, and we can actually maybe work on a new collaboration, and then we can apply for this funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Rachel Locklewis, you've raised your hand.
Hello. Thanks for that, Kathy, Helen and Amy. It's really useful. I've got so 2 questions, but they're related, and they're both to do with partners. Firstly, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm a historian, and I'm thinking of working with archivists and Women's Archive Wales, who aren't archivists, strictly speaking, despite the title. So presumably, even though we're all historians in the kind of broad sense of the word, the fact that I'd be working with, I'm a historian, but working with archivists and people who run a registered charity, is that enough does that suffice as interdisciplinary? That's my first question.
Yeah, it does sound like it. I mean, because you're working with charities as well, and I presume you're working at a Welsh university, and the archivists are working for a museum or somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that there's probably sufficient.
Okay, that's interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
All right, good. And then I wondered, no, thank you for that. So I'll definitely have a go on that count. And then I wondered sort of about the etiquette of it, is that what would I typically talk to them in advance about this? I sort of have with one archivist informally. Or would the invitation to the proposed workshop stroke meeting, would that suffice as the the kind of beginning of it? And I mean, I understand I can probably decide that myself, but would it be normal? Would it be an advantage on the application to be able to say that I'd already had informal discussions with the partners, or does that not need I not worry about that for the moment?
I'm going to let Helen answer that question. Go ahead, Helen.
Yes, thank you, Rachel, for the question. Yes, definitely go ahead and have informal discussions, and even get a sort of informal commitment to come to the workshop from the partners you want to work with. And you can say to them, look, this is contingent on getting the funding. I may not get the funding, and then we'll have to think again about how we get together. But assuming I get the funding, would you be willing to come and join in with this particular event and get expressions of interest, in theory, from the people that you want to work with? And then in your application, you can say, I've spoken to this named person from this archive and that named person from that museum. They are very interested, and they can contribute X, Y, and Z in terms of their expertise. And that really fleshes out the application and makes it much stronger. And I mean, it's no, in terms of etiquette, that is absolutely standard academic practice. Everybody understands grant applications are completely contingent. Nobody will be surprised if you write back and say, sorry, I didn't get the funding, let's try again another time. they might then come back to you and say, well, actually, we've got funding from over here. Maybe we could do it in another way. And before you know it, you know, your network is up and running. So it's always worthwhile making these informal contacts and running with it as far as you can. And it will strengthen your application if you already have some definite expressions of interest.
Great, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Right, did anyone else? Rachel, that's your hand down, an old hand as it were. Thanks. Were there any other questions? Or,
I wonder if Amy has any thoughts about Rachel's question, which was quite interesting, because presumably, Amy, you had a team already, you know, in place when you made your application, or did you? How did you go about that?
Yeah, we kind of just built on from within the academic team, who are non-academic collaborators in the past had been. So some people were contacted exactly how Helen's advised. So just that kind of preliminary, this is going to happen if it's funded. Are you interested? And just those informal emails sent off. And we did start from everyone who was mentioned, I believe, we've already had contact with from the current academic team. So, but I'm sure even if it's people who you're building new relationships with, I'm sure people will be really interested by your research.
Great, thanks, Amy. I'll just give you a minute. Did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to add, Helen, in case anyone has any questions while we're waiting here?
I suppose that my final advice would be to early career researchers, if you haven't applied for any or many grants before, do ask a colleague to look at your application before you send it in. It's very useful to get feedback from more senior colleagues who are very experienced grant appliers, or perhaps even successfully have had grants themselves, because they're in a position to advise you about how convincing and how persuasive your case sounds and what you could do to strengthen it. So do get some feedback. And for people who do have experience of grant applications, well, you know the drill then. You know what it is that you have to do to make your case sound persuasive. You know how to justify a budget. Use those skills you've already got in terms of previous grant applications to make the case for support in the way that you've done on previous projects. You know, take this seriously, even though it's only £1,000, take it seriously. Give it the kind of thought and practical thinking that you would use for a much larger application, and use the skills you've already learned in writing grant applications to put this one together. So that's my advice.
Thanks, Helen. Amy, any final thoughts on the scheme or applications and applying?
Not anything new from what's been said, and yeah, I would just echo what Helen has said of take advantage of the scheme, and to take the time to put in the planning now, which ultimately will mean you'll have a really nicely designed workshop as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you both, Amy and Helen, for your contributions to this. It's been the first time for us doing an application webinar, and the scheme is still relatively new. So I'm really grateful to you both for taking the time out. And thank you to all of you who've been able to come. Diolch yn fawr am ddod. We do look forward to receiving your application for the grant scheme, which I think is going to be really exciting, and hopefully will also benefit you through the process of applying, and also hopefully will lead you to being able to apply for new funds and larger grants. So thank you so much. Barbara's just posting in some final email addresses if you need them. So thank you for all for coming. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.